What is the most touching act of kindness you have ever witnessed or experienced? Kathleen Giordano. My sister committed suicide in 2000. She was 35. The second of 5 daughters. My family was devastated. My parents really had no money to pay for this funeral. So we are sitting in the funeral home with the director going over the details. It was my parents, me, and one of my other sisters. At the end of the meeting, the director closed his folder and looked at all of us. He said life has been good to him and there would no charge. Can you believe that? Right after the funeral and the church ended and people were gathering outside, I saw the director. He was crying and I hugged him and thanked him for everything. I never have experienced the funeral director crying at a funeral, so I wonder if his family was touched by suicide too. I don't know. He is someone I will never forget and will never forget how kind and generous he was. 28.6K views. View 2,336 upvotes. Andrea Duncan. Back during the recession, I was actually the recipient of 2 of the most amazing acts of kindness, and though they differed enormously in terms of dollar value, I've never forgotten either. The smaller of the 2 was at Great Clips. I'd gone in for a badly needed haircut, and was hoping I could get it done for free, for donating my hair to charity, a local group that makes human hair wigs for ladies who suffer hair loss from cancer treatment. Alas, my hair wasn't long enough, so I would have to pay the $14 or whatever it was. I could barely afford it, but I figured I could put it on my credit card, as there was just about enough credit remaining to cover it. But when I got done and went to the desk to pay, I was told that it was already paid. Someone who'd been sitting waiting their turn had paid for my haircut for me. I had no idea who it was, as they'd already left. The second was a lot more money, and was from a business, which made it even more remarkable. We desperately needed tires for our truck. 2 were nearly bald, and the other 2 weren't in great shape either, but all we could conceivably afford was 2. So we're sitting there waiting, and a guy comes out and says to my husband, "Mr. Duncan, you know all 4 of your tires need replacing." My husband said yes, but 2 was all we could afford. We'd have to wait till we could afford it, to come back and get the other 2. The guy says, "We don't want any of our customers to be driving around on tires that unsafe, so we're putting 4 tires on." My husband argued with him that we couldn't possibly afford all 4, but the guy said no, you only need to pay for 2. The other 2 are just so that you stay alive to be our customer in the years ahead. Needless to say, we were both flabbergasted. I said, "I don't know what to say." The young man said, "Just say thank you." So we both did, from the bottom of our hearts. The business? Discount Tire, here in Lawrenceville, Georgia. They'll have our business for as long as we live. And nowadays we buy Michelins. I hope they're getting a decent retail markup, despite the name of the business. Please patronize them, if you live in this area, because they're by far the kindest and most ethical business I've ever encountered. 32.5K views. View 2,878 upvotes. Justine Saracen. About 20 years ago, living in New York City, I had a terrible asthma attack. Being too poor to afford an ambulance, I used my last air to call a taxi and then staggered downstairs from my apartment to meet it. In my haste and desperation, I neglected to check my purse for cash and found I had no money. But the driver heard my wheezing and drove me to the emergency entrance of the closest hospital and simply wished me well. 2 days later, when the doctors decided it was safe to let me go home, I called another taxi, with the intention of promising to go up into my apartment to get the money to pay him. By bizarre luck, it was the same driver, and he explained that I didn't have to pay him this time either. His son was asthmatic and had to be driven to the emergency more than once. He was happy to be able to help me in this small way. It is probably irrelevant, but I want to mention it. He was a bearded Muslim, and if I had not been so short of air on my first trip with him, I might have been intimidated. How wrong I would have been. He was the kindest man I ever met. 82.7K views. View 11,580 upvotes. D. Cudby. Was riding my 50 cubic centimeters scooter through Wellington. As I crossed an intersection, I saw something fall onto the road from a child's clothing. It was safe for me to U-turn immediately. I swooped a small money wallet off the street and looked for the people I'd just seen crossing the road. It's funny how people can disappear. The only thing in the wallet to identify the owner was a library card. I visited the library, but the address they had wasn't current. Mail had been returned. This was in the very early days of internet, when few people owned computers. My next step was to take it home and phone everyone with their surname in the phone book and ask for the name on the card. Fortunately, after a dozen calls, I got a yes asking for the girl's name and could ask my second question: did they lose their wallet yesterday? The reaction was electric. The boy who answered the phone shouted to his parents, and an adult came to the phone. I explained how I saw the wallet fall onto the road and what I'd done to find the owner. The whole family drove to see me the following afternoon with a handwritten thank you card and a box of Rose's chocolates. I couldn't have been happier to reunite someone with their property smiling face with smiling eyes. 11.9K views. View 1,138 upvotes.